a privilege to be invited here today. Such a privilege to be here today and be able to kind of share with you guys a little bit more about Elizabeth House and the work that we do. I know some of you have been involved with the campaign with the No Room in the Inn. And for us at Elizabeth House, we are absolutely ecstatic and excited to have been selected for this amazing opportunity this year. We are getting a new kitchen, and that is such a huge blessing for Elizabeth House. We are, thank you doesn't begin to cover it, and so we're excited about that. And so I'd like to start off by sharing a little bit about Elizabeth House and sort of our history. So I guess I'll start with E4C. So E4C stands for the Edmonton City Centre Church Corporation, starting with 4 churches in the city centre back in 1979. Some of you guys might be familiar with E4C and some of the work that's done by E4C. So E4C's mission is to limit, alleviate, and ultimately eliminate poverty. And so E4C takes care of people whose needs may not fit with other programs or organizations, people who deserve to be listened to and respected no matter what their circumstances or challenges. They see people and not problems. They welcome them without judgment and without bias, and that each year E4C programs and services impact more than 12,000 vulnerable people, children, youth, adults, and families in Edmonton. And so as part of E4C, Elizabeth House, we are one of their programs within the Homeless Supports Division. And so for Elizabeth House, we are a safe place for women who are experiencing homelessness. And so we're actually currently called short-term supportive housing is the term for it. When people say, what is Elizabeth House? I often say, well, we're short-term supportive housing. But when you say short-term supportive housing, a lot of people say, well, what is that? So I say, well, short-term supportive housing is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's short-term, it's supportive, and it's housing. And so the one thing that everybody at Elizabeth House has in common is that they're all women or transgendered women experiencing homelessness. But the unique thing about it is why? What led to their homelessness? Because each person has a story, and each story is so diverse. At Elizabeth House, diversity looks like women from all ages, all racial backgrounds, all various faith backgrounds, some who are brand new to Edmonton, others who have been born and raised right here in Edmonton. We've had women who are pregnant and expecting a child. We've had women who are fleeing an abusive relationship. We've had women who are brand new to Canada and maybe got brought over here by what they thought was going to be a loving relationship, and things went sideways and they found themselves alone in a brand new country with nowhere to go. We've had grandmothers and a lot of elderly women as well who, they've raised their children, they've helped raise some of their grandchildren, maybe they were living with one of their children for a while and things went sideways, or their spouse passed away and it left them in sort of a sense of poverty where they then lost a condo or apartment and ended up with nowhere to go. We get some women coming from Alberta Hospital having had a mental health crisis that they need to recover from. We've had women coming from the criminal justice system who've had some difficulty with the law and now they are trying to get their life back on track. We have women that are working on education and employment, sometimes language learning if English is a second language. A number of various reasons that have led to them being in need of a safe place. And so that's what we strive to provide at Elizabeth House, is a safe place for women to grow, to heal, to move forward, to get things back on track. Not just obviously a housing goal, because our expectation when people come to Elizabeth House is that they would be working. We have caseworkers that work at Elizabeth House, and the goal is that they would connect with their caseworker and they'd be working on a goal for housing. So they'd be talking with their caseworker about that and start planning for what their housing goal and what their housing process is going to look like. But then in addition to that, while they're working on that and waiting on that and striving towards that, we also ask that they work with their caseworker on another goal they might be having for themselves. So that is going to be so unique for that person, right? Because it's going to depend largely on why they're there. what they want to see for their life. What do they see as moving forward? What do they see as success for their journey? And so our goal is to provide that safe place. It's not without its challenges. We have a facility that can house 20 women at any given time. And when the women first come to Elizabeth House, often they're in a shared bedroom. Approximately half of our bedrooms are shared accommodation, so that's 2 ladies per room. And the other half are single rooms. So once someone's been there a little while and a single room comes available, then they can move to a single room, so they can have some of their own space, which is always a nice thing. A few interesting things to note about Elizabeth House that kind of makes us unique in the community is the fact that we're a clean and sober living facility. And nowadays, so many places are either a wet facility or harm reduction model, but we are a little bit old school in the clean and sober concept, which makes us unique in the community because there's a lot of ladies that's what they're looking for. Maybe they've struggled with that in the past, or they're at various phases in their addiction recovery and they want a clean and sober environment, or maybe they've never struggled with that, but they themselves feel more safe and feel more secure in a clean and sober environment, so they don't have to worry about that. So regardless of sort of which viewpoint they're coming from, often it's well appreciated to have a clean and sober environment. And so to keep Elizabeth House a clean and sober environment, we have to work actively with people in their addiction recovery, encouraging and supporting them receiving support. We also very much aim to get people into a treatment program if that's what they need, if someone's struggling. And we can even hold their bed for them up to 42 days while they attend a treatment program if needed. And so we're very much advocate for that for people and try and support that as much as we can. I'm trying to think what else I can share about Elizabeth House.
When you say short term, how short?
That's
short term.
That's a really good question. So on average, most people at Elizabeth House stay somewhere between 3 to 9 months. However, we have people that might only stay 2 or 3 weeks if they're able to get things sorted out for themselves in a very short period of time. We've also had people that have stayed a year, maybe a little over a year at times, depending on the nature of their circumstances and if housing is taking a while, or if there's some other barriers or things they're still trying to work through. So there's no official set time frame for that, other than our target is 6 months. That'd be our aim, our good goal is trying to keep it around the 6 month mark, but we got a lot of people that, it's closer towards a year. Some people maybe towards the 3 months. It just very much depends person by person.
Where are you located?
Okay, well, we're in a central neighborhood just off of 118th Avenue at 117th Avenue and 93rd Street. So we're quite central. We're not right in the downtown core, but we're just off Alberta Avenue on 117th and 93rd. So it's got its ups and downs, the challenges of our community. It's good in that it's centrally located, so it's close to everything for people to be able to access the various programs and services they need. Busing and that is really close and handy. But the neighborhood does present a challenge, simply because there's a lot of, drugs or prostitution or various activities, criminal elements or things going on in that neighborhood that can make it a bit of a challenge for people as well. So we're not shy about owning up to that and saying, it's an up and coming neighborhood. There's been a lot of, progress made on the 118th Avenue there to kind of propel the community forward in a positive way. So there's a lot of positive things coming in that neighborhood, and we want to be part of that. We want to be part of the positivity that's there, the good things that are happening. And so we take part in the community. We have a lot of our ladies go to art classes. We connect very much with the church next door, St. Faith's Church, right next door to us. They do a lunch on Wednesdays, and they do some art classes and some meetings in their building that our ladies attend. And then right on the corner is the Nina Haggerty Center for Art, and so we get a lot of ladies also connecting there as well, and all up and down the avenue at various activities or venues. There's a lot of different festivals or different things, especially in the summertime. I know recently they had the ice sculptures there on 118th. We're just right in behind that. So right in the hub of activity there.
Was the original Elizabeth in the name?
That's a good question. I'm not sure where the name Elizabeth House completely comes from. At one point, Elizabeth House was ran by the Sisters of the St. John's.
The Divine.
The Divine, yes.
I'm an associate.
Well, there we go.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. So the sisters ran. I have the history with me actually, but I actually stayed there for 3 months. I was living in Victoria, and Sister Rosemary Ann came to speak to us at the church, and that I belonged to the Anglican Church, and I became an associate. And then when I came to Edmonton looking for work, I lived with them for 3 months. At that time, they had a different mandate, but they did a lot of inner city work, and we all miss having them here.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I've heard such good things about the Sisters of St. John's and the work that they've done. And they were at Elizabeth House until 2001. So they have a really long history of amazing work that they were doing from that location all the way up until 2001. And then Elizabeth House was born. And we sort of sparked initially as a sister program to the WEAC, that's the Women's Emergency Accommodation Centre. And that's an emergency shelter for women ran by E4C as well. And what was happening is the space at WEAC was limited and it was getting overcrowded, and they needed a place for overflow, for excess, for when there's more people and more need than they had capacity for. And so originally Elizabeth House opened up as an opportunity to sort of be a bit of an overflow. Well, what they discovered was there's ladies at at WEAC that were wanting more than just a bed and a meal. They're wanting, to change things, to move forward, to leave sort of homelessness behind and just get things back on track in their life. And so they thought, you know what, let's have, at that time it was called second stage housing or transitional housing. And so that's when Elizabeth House became transitional housing, and that's where we started looking at, well, why don't we take the people that are really keen to move forward rather than just be overflow. And so that's where the dream sparked, and then from there we started bringing in caseworkers, working with the people that, having them being referred from WEAC, the ones that were sort of expressing interest in more for themselves. And the clean and sober concept was born, and working with a caseworker and setting housing goals and employment and education and health goals, whatever, became a major part of the program. And the rest is kind of history. So then that's been happening now for the last 14 years. And we've been seeing a lot of wonderful stories of hope, stories of healing, stories of success. And community life at Elizabeth House is a challenge because it's a community living environment. And so not only are some bedrooms shared, but community spaces, living room, bathrooms, and kitchen. And that kind of brings us a little bit to our kitchen. Our kitchen, in this pamphlet here, you can see some pictures, and you see our existing kitchen is very well loved. It's been very well loved, so well loved that it's at the point where it was in desperate need. And we're excited to be getting a new kitchen because it's going to breathe new life into Elizabeth House. We're going to be able to expand it larger and make it a place where it can be a bit of a teaching kitchen or a place for people to gather, kind of become the heart of the home, so to speak. And so we're super excited about that. And so when I was thinking about what I could share today about Elizabeth House, I could share a few things with you guys about where we came from, where we're headed, what we do at Elizabeth House. But I can only speak to it so much. I thought it would be wonderful to have someone who's currently a resident of Elizabeth House be able to actually speak to what it's like at Elizabeth House and be able to share a little bit of their journey and story with you. And so today I have the privilege to have brought Tally here with me, and she's a phenomenal woman, and I want to introduce her. We appreciate Tally so much at Elizabeth House. She brings a zest and life and fun to the house, and we're just so happy that she's here today to take a bold step and share a little bit with you guys about her journey, and she's prepared some things. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tally, And take it away, Tally.
Yes, thank you, Roxanne. Thank you for all the nice comments. Yeah, homelessness is not what you think. It's not the stereotype of a hobo on the streets. It really affects more people than you realize. If you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be homeless, I would have laughed like it was a joke, just a silly joke. How could that be possible? I was married, I had 2 children, a beautiful home, a cottage, a boat, a Costco membership. We had it all. We had everything, or so I thought. But I didn't realize how much money was sort of being squandered. I was a spoiled housewife. And so, I had to trade things off in order to stay like that, like infidelity, drug abuse, which comes to abuse on you. When you're living in it, you don't see it. So I took the step to divorce and figured I would collect alimony, wait till my son was finished university, blah, blah, blah. My son, my husband, ex-husband now, is terminally ill, and our 2 children are sort of taking care of him. And so things just it wasn't that easy. I had to jump into this big abyss of, not knowing really what I was getting into. So I came to Edmonton to find work. I do have an education. My mother insisted I go to college, so I do have an education, but I haven't worked at it for so long that it's hard to get hired then at this age with no recent experience. So now I'm at Elizabeth House. I found out about this through an employment counselor, and thank goodness, because now I can sort of get myself straightened out. I don't look at myself now as being homeless. I have a nice room that's my own. I've been there now for 3.5 months. A room that's my own, and now I can concentrate on upgrading my skills, gaining a little bit of work experience, and finally get back into the workforce and get my own place. And I'm looking forward to all of that, because really I left with nothing. I had everything and now have nothing. How can that be? But it's happened, and if you would have told me that, I just would have, no, that's not possible. It is. It is. So at any rate, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the kitchen and what that would mean to us girls, and I was talking to them about it. And my mother was a cook by trade, and I was trained in a commercial kitchen without pay. I did things her way, and her way only. She was very strict. But by process of osmosis, I learned to do the dishes the right way, the sanitary way, the importance of cleaning, keeping your hands clean in the kitchen, all this stuff, and cooking. And I can't stress the importance of a well-functioning kitchen. And the kitchen is the heart of the home, and it is the heart of the Elizabeth House. All of us girls like to be in there, congregate in there, see who's making what for supper and how they're doing it. And so you need various stations when you're working in a kitchen, and that little kitchen is so cramped. 3 people at a counter no bigger than this table trying to do salad, main entree, vegetables. So if we had a nice new kitchen with workspace, modern sinks, dishwashing equipment, it will make all the difference in the world. So not only though in the kitchen do we just prepare meals, etc., but it's a place that builds confidence and engages all of us girls in conversation. We share our ideas, our recipes, and it's fun teamwork, and it brings us out of the shadows and back into a productive member of society where we feel good about ourselves and our community.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Most
Thank you so much, Tally. And so I guess what I wanted to do also is just sort of open up, I guess Dawn mentioned you guys like to have some question and answer time, discussion. So I kind of wanted to open it up for some questions, comments, discussion. So if anyone has any questions, be more for myself or Tally, we're more than happy to.
What about children? Can you bring your children with them or?
Well, Elizabeth House right now is for women only.
Okay.
However, we do have a lot of moms whose children are either older and grown and they want to come back and visit, so they're more than welcome to visit. Or if they have young ones living with family or friends or even in care, a lot of times we can work with the family on family reunification. So we have a visitor room and we're able to book visits and allow the moms and kids to visit in a safe and healthy and private way. And to share a little bit of the life at Elizabeth House if needed. And so we're flexible with that as much as we can be. However, unfortunately at this time we don't take children to live. So that does, I guess, prevent a bit of a barrier for women who are looking for housing with their children. I know a lot of the shelters that take children, it's a 21-day stay. 3 weeks is what they get in a lot of times in the shelters when people are fleeing a domestic violence situation. And part of that is a good thing because they're wanting to not have children in shelters for any lengthy period of time. So the 21 days to sort of get mom and kids rehoused is kind of the goal at those shelters. And so if someone does call up and they are actively parenting their child, we refer them to one of those ones that can hopefully better meet their need. But for some of our ladies who are just looking to reunify, we can work with them, with their child, with their child's caseworker, and come up with a plan and try and get mom and kids reunited and hopefully be able to be housed together.
Thank you.
No, Kelly, excuse me. Do you take turns helping with meals and
Yes.
doing
Yes.
the laundry and
Yes.
so on? That's question number one.
Yes.
And I love the chapel there and the services that the sisters had. Do you still have the chapel and do you
Yes.
still have services?
Yes.
And do you have like priests coming in or?
There's no priest coming in, but the chapel gathering room is still there.
Mhm.
And Bibles in there and whatnot, and you can go in there and have quiet time and read or meditate. I think we had some of the nuns from the Order of St. John came back just last weekend.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I went
We
through
had
the
a
house.
big retreat. Yeah.
And they came in and went through the house, some who had lived there, and some of the things are exactly the same. There's one drawer in the kitchen that has been there for 25 years, she said, and the front of it, the little design is all worn off. It's just an extra little shelf that you could buy. And it was funny. But yes, we all take turns in the kitchen. We have a chore list. You pick out kitchen chores, so many kitchen chores a week, bathroom, hallways, because we clean the house.
Mhm.
The residents have to clean the house or we wouldn't be able to function. And we all take turns being a cook's helper, dishwashing, and cleaning up the food. You have to label all the food, the date, what it is, because after 3 days or after it's been heated up a couple of times, it has to go out. There's yeah, just like a restaurant
Yeah,
would be.
yeah.
People are worried. Yeah, so we all take turns in the kitchen, yes, and
Yeah.
everybody has to be trained for their particular job,
Yes.
yeah.
And then is there a garden still? Because the sisters used to garden.
After the meeting, we're going to go buy topsoil and start seedlings,
Mhm.
yes, and I wrote down some names of seeds and stuff we're going to, so
Yeah.
yeah, there's still a garden.
Great.
Mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a question here.
Actually, my question was exactly the same.
Oh.
It was about children. But I was going to say, I think the Elizabeth, I was told, is Elizabeth Fry. Somebody told me that once.
But that's what I thought, but possibly not. It's not anything to do with Elizabeth Fry.
I don't believe
We don't-
so. I think
but-
it's separate.
Yeah,
I know some
somebody
people get
told me
us
that
mixed up
once.
and they call for Elizabeth Fry, they'll call us. Or they'll call Elizabeth Fry for Elizabeth House. You know, there's a
Right,
little bit
right,
of that
right.
happening. We get a few of their phone calls and vice versa.
Oh.
But
I was eventually told, except this lady kept saying, it might not be so, it might not, but I love this story, that is because Elizabeth sheltered Mary when she was pregnant with Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I love that, so I like to think that's what it's named for, yeah.
Well, there was a time when it functioned as a home for unwed mothers.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
well, that
So
makes
that would
perfect
make perfect
sense.
sense.
Yeah, but this is, I'm
And,
sorry I forget your name.
Roxanne,
This is Roxanne's story.
actually, it was actually my mom who pointed that out when I applied to work at Elizabeth House, and I told her I got the job at Elizabeth House, and well, what are you going to be doing, and what's Elizabeth House? And I said, well, I don't know why it's called Elizabeth House, and she says, you know what? I bet you it's from the Bible story when Elizabeth sheltered Mary when she was expecting Jesus, and
Right.
that kind of a concept of a safe shelter, a safe place. Elizabeth's house was a safe place to be, and so I always just sort of took that as that's likely sort of at some point where it kind of came from. However, when and how it actually got named Elizabeth House, I don't know for sure, but that's the story I'm going to stick to anyway, because
Right.
that's the one I like best.
So there you have it, Yvette.
yeah.
I'm wondering about the staffing and volunteers and what other services you have coming to your house, and whether you have connection with sending people to if they need treatment for alcoholism or drugs or mental health, or how do you connect with that, or do you have people coming into your house to give that kind of staffing?
That's a really good question. A lot of people ask, and so I can speak to that. That has ebbed and flowed and changed over the years. We've had in-house services and people reaching out in community services, and at the moment it's mixed. I would say probably 80% of the programs and services that Our Ladies access are out in the community, and that is right now somewhat intentional. Because by having it out in the community, that gets people out. It gets people connecting in the community so that they can build a support network. They can build a community that is not just at Elizabeth House, but they can develop and forge relationships, supports outside of Elizabeth House, so that when they move out from Elizabeth House, not everything is tied up right in the house. They have connections, they have supports. The idea being that they can continue those relationships and continue those supports even after they've moved out. However, that being said, we do still have a lot of services at various times provided at Elizabeth House. So we have recently had some students from the University of Alberta for the med students taking part in what they call physicianship, and it's academic service learning, and so it's an opportunity for these first year med students to get the opportunity to sort of grassroots, frontline, in the community, get a chance to sort of firsthand sort of serve on the ground level, see what life is like for the average people in the community, so that ideally they can learn and grow from that and become better physicians. And in the meantime, they can give to Elizabeth House and provide some care and some support and some service to us. And so we've had that. We've had nursing students in the past. We've had different church groups come and volunteer. We sometimes have, Suncor came and did a Day of Caring, United Way campaign, Day of Caring, and they painted our visitor room downstairs. So various projects that people come. We've had a group of students that came and did our prepped our garden for us. That was not last year, but the year before. And it was really, really neat. So we do have a variety of volunteers. As far as staffing, we are staffed 24/7. And so keeping the house staffed is always sometimes a challenge, with budget, with availability, with making sure we have the right people at the right time in the right place. It can be a little bit of a challenge, but we manage. Our residents are phenomenal. As Tally said, they do a large part of the janitorial services, the chores, some of those household things. So basically, they make the home function, right? So they're a big part of that as well. As far as programming, we have had art therapy at Elizabeth House. In the past, we've offered some first aid and self-defense when budget has allowed for some of those courses. More recently, we have had wellness workshops. We've had the Reuse Center came not long ago and did a craft night for us. We have spa nights, karaoke nights. We do some in-house fun and activities. We have movie nights on Fridays. I don't know, maybe Tally can speak a little bit to some of the activities, events. In fact, actually, maybe Tally can tell you a little bit about an event she planned and held at the house last month.
Oh, we had an Oscar party. I don't know if you've ever had an Oscar party or been to an Oscar party, but the night of the Oscars, everybody ends up, I don't know, watching the Oscars, especially the last hour, because that's when all the best picture, the best actress, the best actor, they all come up. So the premise is, and I thought it would be really good for Elizabeth House, it's sort of like a prom night. A lot of girls didn't have a prom, didn't maybe graduate high school, college. So they had a night to be able to get dressed up, in their formal gowns and walk a red carpet. It was a gold carpet, and everybody had traced their hand. We cut them out. We had an Elizabeth House Walk of Fame with their handprint there. And, we had lots of hors d'oeuvres and punch, and we just had a really fun night. We had the fireplace going. We took pictures of them sitting, posing by the fireplace. We made Oscar cookies on a stick. That was their award. We had a fun night. We decorated, lots of stars hanging from the ceilings and stuff. It was fun. They really liked it. They enjoyed that.
No, it's not clear to me how you're building, because obviously there's some roots. The building originally was Anglican connection, and there's the new no room at an inn. But the facility itself, is it church affiliated? Or how do you describe that?
Well, it's currently owned and operated by E4C, which is the Edmonton City Centre Church Corporation.
Oh, it's a church corporation. Okay,
Yeah,
got that. Okay.
And so E4C is a faith-based organization that was started by the four churches back in '79,
okay.
And now it's involved in a whole lot of different nonprofit social service sectors, everything from youth and children, and they do a lot of like the school snack lunch program. They run a lot of different programs within the community, and some of that is homeless supports, which is our WEAC, the Women's Emergency Accommodation, and then also Elizabeth House. There's Crossroads Outreach, Crossroads Downtown. There's just a number of supports, not only in the homeless supports division, but in all aspects of social service in Edmonton. So
is there funding from government?
Yes, absolutely. Elizabeth House is funded through the Alberta government, through the Homeward Trust. Yeah, we're part of the Homeward Trust is our funder, and they fund a lot of the Housing First initiatives here in the city of Edmonton, a variety of agencies and organizations, and so we're one of the ones that they fund.
Can I just to go back to reiterate on your question about the prayer room, the gathering room? Yes, there's a Bible study there every week. I should say that. There's a new cook and a young girl, and she always has her Christian music playing in the kitchen. But oddly enough, I know a lot of that music just from our own choir and stuff at church. And so she does a Bible study every week, and a lot of people attend, and we all had an outing, a field trip. We went to a movie. We went to go see the movie Risen. I don't know if you know of that. That was playing at the movie theaters. It's probably still out there. It was only just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and it's a movie told through the eyes of a Roman soldier who was given the task of finding Christ's body, Jesus' body, either dead or alive or risen. They didn't know, but Pontius Pilate wanted that body because he didn't want a big revolt coming up. You know, they wanted to say, here he is, yes he is, he's gone, okay, so it's over. But it didn't work that way. The soldier became converted, and it's all about his journey and how that happened, and it was pretty incredible. So there is still, you know, prayer, things go on, and yeah.
But do you welcome women of other faiths too, Roxanne? Oh, that's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We're faith-based, but we take people from all, like E4C is open to anyone and everyone, regardless of their faith or faith background. And so, yeah, we have a unique mix and variety of people from all walks of life, all over. It's a unique, diverse, it's a very diverse group, and so it's kind of fun. You got some young ones in the house, you know, 18, 19, 20 years old, and you got some, you know, middle-aged, 30, 40s, 50s, and then you get a couple older ones.
Middle-aged at 30?
And then we got some older ones that are in their 60s and 70s.
I'm middle-aged.
So, and we do actually take seniors. We don't get a whole lot of people over 65, but we do have a few. Usually every group of 20, there's at least usually one or even two that are over 65.
Sorry, Roxanne. I was going to say, but I can say this, that as diverse as we are, we all connect there, because you realize, you know, when I went through this myself, you feel so alone, you feel like such a failure, you feel a lot of things, but when you go there, you realize I'm not alone. You know, everybody has their story and everybody has their crosses to bear. And you realize that when you go there, no matter what their age, young or older, and that, you know, we can persevere, that we're not a failure just because we did this or didn't do that. And, you know, to soldier on, that there's more meaning in life than just, you know, pitying yourself, feeling sorry. You can get up and go again and still have a good life. Yeah. And it instills all that confidence in you again. Because I don't consider myself homeless anymore. Because I know I will go on and get an apartment. They help you to connect you to the right people to help you do all these things that, you know, other people, well, we take it for granted. You know, I took it for granted all those years, that good life I had.
So I also brought a bit of a poem written by one of our former residents who moved out not too long ago, and she did up a poem to sort of express a little bit about her feelings. And so I thought, why not have, you know, a voice from one of our former residents as well? So it's titled Elizabeth House, and she wrote, "You reached down and grabbed my hand and pulled me up from despair. You held on tight and found me a place I could put my head at night. You gave me a room, a bed, and my own chair. I sleep now in comfort and strength, without anger, without hunger, without fright. You hold on as I feel my way, learning the strange, love, respect, caring. I tread now on unknown ground, where people hold on to each other, support their dreams, encourage their hopes, and face their futures. I awake in the warmth of knowing I'll have more because so many believe in sharing. So do not give up. Don't lie down. The river of despair is a cold place to be, but just wait. They are out there looking to help you. I know this for sure. JW." So I thought that was really a unique way of her expressing her feelings about Elizabeth House and her journey and of where she's been and where she's headed. And she's now successfully housed, and we're, you know, seeing great things with her and happy for her. And so, so we're pleased and we're excited about the work that we're doing, and we're thankful. We're thankful for people like you who give your time to listen and learn more about Elizabeth House and for all the different various ways. I know a lot of you guys have supported programs and services in the community, including Elizabeth House, especially anyone who's been involved with Norm in the Inn or supported or contributed to that. We want to say thank you, and we appreciate the work that you guys do.
I'm interested in if there's any, you probably shouldn't like to talk about it, but do you have any failures or you can't help and you have to send them back on the street or something?
Well, I don't like to use the word failures, but I definitely, there are people whose journey maybe doesn't end successfully their first time at Elizabeth House. So we have a 30 days to reapply rule. So if we have to ask somebody to leave and we have to close their bed, that's a really unfortunate circumstance, but it does happen. Probably more often than we would ever like it to be, because we'd like it to never happen. But when that does happen, it's 30 days for them to reapply. So after 30 days away, they can reapply. We would like to talk with them, assess, what happened, what's changed now, what they want for the future. And if they're wanting another opportunity, then we provide that for them. So we have had people come for a repeat visit at Elizabeth House.
Is there any consistency in what makes them?
Sometimes I say it's a little bit like quitting smoking. It doesn't always happen the first time. Sometimes it's the second or the third visit to Elizabeth House that really captures the person, and they just sort of start getting their feet under them. And so for some people, they only need one time at Elizabeth House, and they were able to kind of make the changes or receive the support that they needed, and that was wonderful. But for others, it is sometimes 2 or even 3 times. The third time's the charm, right? Sometimes it's that they need that second chance or that third chance to just really get that support that they needed. And there maybe the first time they came, they thought they were in a place and they maybe weren't quite, and by the second or the third time, maybe they're really ready. And so we see a lot of success for people, whether it's their first or second or even third time. I wouldn't say anyone's unreachable. However, we do have some people that maybe just aren't quite ready. And we just hope that someday they will be at a place where they feel ready for whatever the changes they want to make, right? It has to be their goals. It can't be just our goals for them, right? They have to want something for themselves. They have to decide what they want and what they want to go after, and they have to be willing to put some work in and do that. And if that's what they're wanting, then we can come alongside and support them. So.
Have you used volunteers, or how would you use volunteers?
Absolutely, volunteers are wonderful. Largely with volunteers, it's kind of a case-by-case situation, because we have volunteers from the community who they have maybe a specific skill set or something they're interested in wanting to give to Elizabeth House, and so if it's something that sort of fits within our program, then we would welcome that. And so we've had people come and do volunteer for various activities.
One girl, she's a plant expert. She comes in, waters the plants, rearranges plants, adds topsoil, does this, does that, and puts some plants together with other plants. Yeah.
Interesting. Some of our most successful and wonderful volunteers are actually former residents that come back to volunteer. The lady she's referring to, we call her the plant whisperer. She's actually a former resident. We have another lady that recently moved out who connected with me and said, "Can I come on Wednesdays and help cook?" And I said, "Absolutely." So that's the nice thing too, is sometimes our volunteers come right from, we've had students, we've had church groups, we've had individuals from the community. We also have a segment of former residents that decide they've benefited, they've appreciated Elizabeth House, they like the place, and they see a need, they see something where they feel like they can find their spot or their niche or something they can give back, and they'd like to be part of what's happening at Elizabeth House, and so we like to make room for that. So I always say people are welcome if they have a gift to give, if they've got something, some time, some effort they want to invest. We're usually good at trying to come up with something, talk with them about what they'd like to provide or give to Elizabeth House, and we can kind of figure out how we can incorporate that. That's the nice thing, is we're pretty flexible.
Yeah, there's a couple of girls that come and give peer support. They've been there. They come and then talk to the other residents and try to figure out ways to help them, guide them, pass on their knowledge of already have going through the ropes.
Can I run a scenario by you? I work as a palliative care chaplain, and I had someone who I think was developmentally delayed, smoked a great deal. It was marvelous support to her roommate who died in the hospital where I was working. When that person died, they no longer, had 2-ish incomes, and so she got kicked out of her housing for being $12 short of the rent. And so she came to visit me when she was at WEAC, because she had to get out of the building because they were fumigating for bed bugs, and so they had to, get everybody out, and, we were only allowed in after 4 o'clock kind of thing. The reason I bring up this story is I'm thinking there are some people whose lives are just really, really hard. And though that person would have had a caseworker with AISH, without another roommate, there would never be enough money for a decent place to live. So I'm wondering what kind of services a place like Elizabeth's House could offer to someone who doesn't have a lot of resources at the best of times.
That is the, I guess I'd say the $1 million question, right? Low-income housing, supportive housing. It's at a, I don't want to say crisis level here in Alberta or in Edmonton, but it's always in short supply, right? Being able to, the demand is always higher than the supply, it seems like, when it comes to low-income housing. A lot of people end up eventually going through Capital Region housing and the low-income housing that's available through the city of Edmonton. And it's not for lack of maybe phenomenal job that they're doing to try and house people economically, but the reality is there's more need than there is the housing available. So as long as that continues to be a problem, we see people with long wait lists, struggling. The rental market in Edmonton has soared over the last few years, and so it's become out of reach for a lot of people. Very much like you said, people wanting to live on their own with the income. I mean, even for seniors with the government seniors income, with the people on AISH, even people on income support, it's very, very tough to make it in the city of Edmonton for housing, especially if you want to be housed on your own in your own apartment. You almost need to apply for some kind of subsidies, grants, and eventually get on, hopefully with Capital Region housing or some sort of subsidized accommodation, because being able to pay full market rent on your own, you're talking close to at least probably about $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. Well, if your income is only $1,200 a month, how are you gonna pay all the rest of your bills, right? And so a lot of people are torn between rent and food. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Tally can kind of speak a little bit to some of the struggle Our Ladies at Elizabeth House face, but it seems like there's always that struggle where there's just not quite enough to meet both, and so you're always struggling. And I know a lot of people have lost their apartments for failure to pay rent, and it's because and it's not always due to mismanagement of finances or addiction, or sometimes it is literally due to the fact that the rents have gone up, and the incomes haven't kept up, and the person is literally at a place where, like, $12 short, that just breaks my heart, right? And so when it comes to WEAC and the spraying for bugs, WEAC sprays for bugs on the third Thursday of every month, and they have to shut their building down, and they have to send everybody out for the day. And so Elizabeth House, being their sister program, we take anywhere from usually 2 to 6 of their most vulnerable people for the day as visitors to Elizabeth House. People who are maybe, if they've worked a night shift and they need to sleep, if they are vulnerable and not feeling well, need to be able to lay on our couch or watch our TV or relax for the day and have a safe place to do so. Because being out in the community, due to maybe their mobility or the weather or something, is not feasible, then we support them with that. And so we get a number of visitors every month on the third Thursday of the month from WEAC. And the WEAC is Women's Emergency Accommodation.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. And so we do get visitors every month. We try and support their program as best we can. Thankfully, we don't have an issue with bed bugs at Elizabeth House at this time, and I say that in a sense of we are just blessed. We are very much blessed. We have a policy, we wash everything when it comes in the door, and we're just quite vigilant, and I guess with a bit of luck and a whole lot of vigilance, we've been able to stay bug-free at this time. Part of that was being able to have all of our carpets removed. Elizabeth House originally, when I first started there, had been riddled with carpet. And actually, my predecessor had done a really good job at removing most of the carpet. So when I came along, there was only a little bit left to have removed, and we were able to thankfully have that carpet removed and replaced with tiled floor. So that really helps cut down on dust and germs and any kind of bugs. Yeah, so we've been blessed that way. So we're now officially carpet free. So we hope to stay bug free.
So do you insist that the women who come in wash all their clothing, the clothing they wear, and take a shower and everything?
Yeah, absolutely, especially the clothing they're bringing with them. Because, and even once they're living at Elizabeth House, you know, you go shopping, especially, you know, a thrift store or a friend's closet, or you get some secondhand stuff. We get donations as well, a lot of clothing donations and stuff. So when those donations come in, even though the person who's donating them might have already washed them at their home or whatever, we re-wash it just to make sure, because we're just trying to be really, really vigilant with that, because that can be a big problem in the community as well. So there's a lot of people, even when you speak with homelessness, a lot of times even bed bugs can be a reason someone's gone homeless, because they were renting an apartment they could barely afford as it was, and then they got the bed bugs, and that destroyed their bed and their furniture and the other things they can't afford to replace. And then next thing you know, they weren't able to make their rent, or the landlord is kicking everybody out to deal with the bed bug. Like, it just, it's a vicious cycle for a lot of people. You know, and bed bugs is just one more small hurdle in all the different hurdles that people face. You know, you name it. It can be a number of different things that can just throw a person over the edge. Income, you know.
The lady that asked about the girl who you said she's a little bit maybe mentally delayed, like a little bit, you know, slow or something, and she smokes a lot. You said, right? Yeah. So, you know, there's not really money in the budget for smoking, rent, and food, and maybe Wi-Fi, you know. So, but there are a lot of agencies out there, you know, community, the food bank, and various places that'll help with food and things like that. I don't know, maybe like a boarding situation might be best for somebody like that, low cost boarding. Yeah, they need more homes like that, don't they? Like for people to go to that can have minimal supervision, probably not a lot, but yeah.
Well, long-term supportive housing with Alberta Health Services is in great need as well, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that even we see in our program where regular market housing isn't appropriate. They require more supports. You know, maybe they're not as fully independent, maybe financially or emotionally, mentally, for whatever reason, as they would like to be, and so they need sort of something in between, maybe living completely independently and sort of living in a group home environment. They need some supportive housing, and so that's where you know, the province and the city and you know, Alberta Health Services, they're all working together to try and create more affordable and long-term supportive housing options. But again, that's really a challenge in our community to find the dollars and find the opportunities and get that done so that people who need that can have that. There's a lot of people on AISH who might need supportive housing and are stuck living in the regular rental market and community, maybe under-supported in some ways. And so it's nice to be able to have some more supportive housing for that. And so we're always looking to find that. And some of the Housing First initiatives have managed buildings, and that's where they've taken over an apartment complex where they'll have somebody at the front desk so people can maybe sign in and sign out, so they can help manage visitors or manage guests, because sometimes people will lose tenancy simply because they have a hard time maybe setting boundaries with family and friends. Family and friends might walk all over them, so even though that person themselves has dealt with their own addiction and issues, and that person has got an apartment now, but that doesn't mean all of their family and friends are in a healthy space, right? And so those family and friends can come alongside, maybe stir up trouble, maybe overstay, maybe take the food and the rent money, or kind of cause some drama for that person and have them end up being homeless yet again, right? So to help provide those boundaries, and that sometimes people need sort of a managed building where there's some supports right on site, right? There's someone managing the building that can kind of maybe set boundaries for how many visitors and how often, and keep track and manage the door so that these people don't just come right in and move on in, right? There's someone kind of managing, so people who struggle with different tenancy issues, that can help them maintain their tenancy so that they're not becoming homeless again. So there's a few of those initiatives in the city as well where they've tried to do that. So, does anyone have any other questions about Elizabeth House or?
Well, it's 1 o'clock, and
Thank you.
some people have to go to work, and some
All right.
people can sit and visit for a while. But I'd like to say a very sincere thank you on behalf of the group. This has been an eye-opener, I think, many of us, and to know that this great work is going on. As many of you know, I've been involved in a lot of fundraising and that sort of thing, and I was going to ask how people are supported, but you mentioned and gave out the brochures on No Room in the Inn, and just last Friday we had a report on the amount of money that's been raised, and No Room in the Inn approaches the churches that are connected with the Edmonton and District Council of Churches. It's not a citywide appeal, but just those churches that are connected with the Council of Churches. And it's been going on since 1999, and the Elizabeth House was the group that we supported this year. And on Friday we were told that $66,000 has been raised for Elizabeth House. And I believe the contract for replacing the kitchen and fixing these things up is something like $72,000, and so they may need a few more contributions, but the people of the churches of Edmonton have really come through again. For quite a number of years now, the average donations have been in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $70,000. And we on the committee don't know how much is going to come in, because it depends on how many people are in church that Sunday, for example. But it's really wonderful that over the years we have now raised well over $800,000 for programs such as this, or for the building of new buildings or renovations to buildings, and a great variety. It's really been heartwarming to want to see the support that we get from the people of the churches. And every year I get a question or two: who's going to be supported this year by No Room in the Inn? And so we're very proud of this. And if anybody is supporting the E4C, a portion of that may go to Elizabeth House as well, because Elizabeth House doesn't have its own bank account, I guess, and everything goes to E4C, and of course it's charitable donations. On behalf of the group, I'd like to give you a thank you, multi-faith calendar, and the brochure about the Interfaith Centre. The calendar has all the special days of about 14 different religions included. So along
Isn't
the
it
side
nice?
here, you'll see the 3rd of January is a special day for one of the faiths and so on. It's really an interesting
Yes.
calendar. And so on behalf of the group, can I say thank you very, very much.